From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis and Josh Nelson.
Welcome to Sox Machine Live. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, alongside the managing editor of SoxMachine.com. It's Jim Margulis as we are streaming live this Thursday night on July 17th, 2023, as it's the All-Star break. And, well, it's the end of the All-Star break as activity picks up again for the Chicago White Sox as play resumes. It was an interesting All-Star game, an unlikely hero for the National League. Jim, the National League finally won an All-Star game. It's been like 9 years, and I have to start off the show by congratulating you. Well done in the home run derby draft. I had a very big lead early, but it was smart of you to figure that Luis Robert was going to hurt himself and Julio Rodriguez was going to gas himself out to be able to win. So congratulations on the home run derby draft.
When Rodriguez hit 41 in the first round, I thought like, oh, I completely miscalculated in terms of like thinking that he might be a little bit too amped, but maybe he was. Maybe just manifested itself differently, not in the first round exit, but not doing much in the last two. But yeah, I'll take it happily, even though Alonso, he didn't so much disappoint as his pitcher disappointed. And that's, I think, one of the biggest takeaways from this year was like realizing how important the batting practice pitcher is, both in terms of pace and location. And if you don't have pace, you better have location. And Alonso's pitcher had neither.
No, I think it was the emergency pitcher for him too, because his original guy had throwing arm issues, so he had to go to a backup. So
Tommy John
poor
surgery.
Peter Alonso. Yeah, but Mookie Betts was not a good pick for me. That's a format that doesn't really work for him. It's one and done probably for Mookie Betts when it comes to the home run derby. But from a White Sox fan perspective, two highlights this week, Monday through Wednesday. Luis Robert put on a show during the home run derby. Yes, he did suffer a right mild calf strain, but boy, Jim, the home runs that he was hitting on Monday were just mammoth shots, and ESPN, I don't think, during their broadcast did a good job capturing just how far and how hard Luis Robert was hitting his home runs in the first round. And Liam Hendriks won an ESPY for his courageous fight against cancer. So at least on the good side for White Sox fans, you got Monday and you have Liam Hendriks' very inspirational speech on Wednesday to take home.
Yeah. Starting with Robert real quick, he was a victim of the format in terms of like, now that's quantity more than quality, and they try to, make the big homers count with the 30 seconds extra bonus time. But just in terms of tracking it, you really don't have the jaw-dropping shots because like even Luis Sierra, who is his batting practice pitcher, like already throwing the next pitch by the time like his longest homer was about to land. So, he's not savoring it. The players, you don't get that kind of slack-jawed response from like the mammoth shots, which is what we used to see in the home run derby. I still think like the pitch clock, this format is superior just because like I remember how much the previous home run derbies dragged and whether it's, based on swings or outs, just, waiting for their pitch over and over again. Having this kind of format, especially with Rodriguez showing the merits of it, just cranking out homers and amping up the crowd with the pace he was going, like there's a trade-off, that is certainly appreciated, but the distance homers takes a hit. As far as Hendriks, yeah, I mean, like, I think, when it comes to this, the cancer battle and him using this for good, bringing a lot of attention to organizations that have helped. A lot of the organizations he's helped, independent of cancer, stepping up to try to support him, like a lot of reciprocity in terms of goodwill with people who do well in their various communities, all, stepping up to support him because he's done so much for them. So yeah, I guess my hope is, with Hendriks, like this is a nice kind of, conclusion to the cancer storyline. Yeah, I imagine he'll still do wonders for, various causes related to it now that he has personal experience. But just, from here, you hope that he can get back on the field. He can get past the elbow issue that had sidelined him. And just, even if he's not a closer, even the White Sox are playing for nothing, just getting back into shape for hopefully a healthy and full 2024. And we'll start thinking of him less as like this inspirational story, even though he is, and more of a just, oh, this guy's a really good pitcher too. And we just haven't been able to see that because of everything his body's been through.
Yeah, it would be great to see Liam Hendriks before the end of the season just to get those reps in. And having a full normal spring training for Liam Hendriks, I think, would do wonders as well as far as getting him ready for the 2024 season. But for the White Sox, with the All-Star break over and looking ahead, I joined our friends Dan Bernstein and Lawrence Holmes on 670 The Score earlier today. We'll have the YouTube link as far as one of the segments topics that we talked about in that particular show. And it was a question that Dan Bernstein asked me, Jim. Now that it's post All-Star break, now the games are back on schedule. Is it time? Is it time for the White Sox to sell? And I think so. And I spent a lot of time on their show explaining why I think it is time for the White Sox to sell. So let me pose this question to you. Is it time for the White Sox to sell? Is this what we're going to be paying attention to in the next couple of weeks?
I think so. And the way they have arranged their rotation, putting Giolito towards the back, certainly indicates that there's an interest in selling or an interest in preserving his ability to make a start for another team, perhaps, giving them one extra start they're paying for, that sometimes factors into what a team is acquiring, whether they're acquiring 12 starts or 13, whether a team is trying to put a dent in a division lead or get ready to kind of angle their approach for the postseason and, getting as many arms as possible. There are a lot of values to those one or two extra starts. So it makes sense to try to preserve them as much as possible. I think you also mentioned in your radio spot that given how Rick Hahn has struggled to pull the trigger on trades or find suitors, find packages to his liking, what have you, whatever gets in the way of him actually making deals. And I wrote about this too on Sox Machine, just noting how he struggled to pull off any trade that is not directly related to either a trade deadline or a DFA or a roster crunch because of player being out of options or something like that. Most of his trades over the last 2.5 years have been forced by just circumstances, time pressures on the roster. And that seems like the only way he can make a trade. And theoretically, he doesn't have to trade Giolito. I mean, he pretty much has to, but there's the ability to offer him the qualifying offer and get a draft pick for him. So he doesn't have to. So I'm of the mindset that if he needs a run up to the deadline, if he can't operate on short notice, if he's not, cavalier enough or Jerry Dipoto enough to have a memory of okay, what trade's next? The trade didn't work out. Okay, let's just, make 5 more and we'll forget about the one that didn't work. If he doesn't have the mindset, then he probably needs as much time as possible to line up everything just so to make that deal. So yeah, he may as well think that he has to trade now because of history's an indication. It's going to be days, maybe a week or so until he finds actually a deal that he feels comfortable doing. And part of it is his history. He's had some bad trades, but when you make so few trades, it just makes it easier to dwell on the bad trades Samardzija, Shields, Tatis, etc. Bringing up those names, even though they're pretty much vestiges of a past team, a past organization, pre-second rebuild that don't really apply to this set of circumstances.
Yeah, Lawrence asked me that question during the radio segment. Does timing matter? And I don't know if timing does matter. To your point, Jim, roster deadline, you are facing a crunch. You got 27 guys in your roster and first pitch is at 7:10 p.m. Central Time. Yeah, I got to make a trade, right? I got to reduce, I got to move somebody off this roster. I don't know if the trade deadline itself is going to spur action from Rick Hahn. I'm wondering if his thought process is going to be, I'm going to wait until I get the best possible deal for Lucas Giolito. And we'll talk about Lucas Giolito more in depth in a moment here, because there is a pretty significant trade rumor and one potential suitor that I think makes a lot of sense that we'll talk about in a moment. But as far as this topic, when can we see the White Sox make some deals? I pointed out 5 pitchers that the White Sox could unload before the deadline. And just the pace that Rick Hahn works at, Yeah, unless he suddenly is a multitasker, which we haven't seen that type of action from him before. Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of time to try to dump 5 pitchers that I think other teams are interested in. And those are Lucas Giolito, Keenan Middleton, because he's an unrestricted free agent after this season. Then you have the guys with the $1 million contract buyouts after this season, and Joe Kelly, even though he's on the injured list right now, and Lance Lynn. And then you got Kendall Graveman, which he's guaranteed $8 million next year. But that's not a lot of money these days for someone that a team could potentially look at as their closer. Those are the 5 pitchers that I think Rick Hahn could move before the end of the trade deadline. And if he waits until the very end to move all 5, I don't think he's going to be able to move all 5. He may be able just to move 1. And then White Sox fans are going to be like, what's going on here? Like, why can't you unload all these players before the deadline and try to help restock the farm system to maybe entertain the idea of reloading in 2024? So as far as timing, like, does it work to trade Lucas Giolito this weekend or before his next start? Does it work or in the most favor for the White Sox before the trade deadline? I don't think the trade deadline is going to spur action for Rick Hahn. I think the only way it's going to spur action for Rick Hahn is if his price is met for Lucas Giolito. But as you laid out in the column, if teams don't want to meet Rick Hahn's price, in the recent history, he doesn't move them. But I feel like he can't afford to not move these guys. Like, it doesn't make much sense holding on to them.
Well, he can't afford, that's one thing is like, the draft pick is not worth that much, a little more money in the draft pool. So like, as we saw with the George Wolkow pick, like it affords, Mike Shirley to pick somebody like him, like some kind of high ceiling prep pick that might not be available with a normal budget. But I mean, like, I think my concern with Giolito is like you have some pitchers on the market. You mentioned Blake Snell. There's also Jordan Montgomery if he's healthy. There's Marcus Stroman. There are some guys who are maybe as good as Giolito, maybe better than Giolito, like within the range, offering the same thing that Giolito's offering right now, which is like starting game 3, maybe game 2 of a postseason, depending on the pitching staff, how deep the bullpen is, et cetera. And if the Cubs say like, oh, we're not going to keep Stroman, or we're just going to take our chances and try to sign him in the offseason, like maybe perhaps they just trade him, beat the White Sox to the punch, and all of a sudden the team that needs that starter has Stroman, and now the price for Giolito has to come down because the demand isn't there. So he's not operating in a vacuum here, especially if more teams, you mentioned, the Padres could be another one that just decides to sell, and Blake Snell would be one of them. That they could flood the market, like AJ Preller, very active, so he might be able to just jump Rick Hahn based on just how quickly he gets things done, even when it doesn't seem like there's a fit for a certain player. Like the ongoing joke I had in the offseason about like how many spots do the Padres have in their 40-man roster? Because I know everybody on there, like, they seem to have 50 on 40. That's the way Preller operates. So like if he gets involved, Mozeliak for St. Louis has said they're going to be selling, just a matter of like, whether it's going to be guys who are not going to be back in 2024 regardless, or just ones they're, think they can cash in on. So there are some teams that have shown the ability to be active in a way the White Sox aren't, that are just kind of lurking there. And so that's why, the perfect price for Lucas Giolito probably doesn't exist with the number of pitchers you can get who are similar in his neighborhood of just being very good starters who might not be counted on to dominate in October.
More conversation about what the White Sox could be possibly selling and their strategy before the trade deadline after a quick word from our sponsor. One reason why I hate buying tickets to anything these days is the waiting room. You know that feeling. You get the pre-sale code, and even if you got the pre-sale code and you log in, you're stuck in the waiting room with thousands of other people, not even sure if you're going to get a chance to buy tickets. Buying tickets to any event shouldn't be stressful, and that's why I've switched and used Game Time. It's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater shows near you. I use it to buy concert and theater tickets now. For Chicago events, you could use it. It's also great for Major League Baseball games as well. They have some killer deals, especially when it comes to White Sox tickets, as Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event, and you can get exclusive flash deals on tickets for the baseball games or any of the comedy and theater shows that'll be happening all summer long in Chicago. And what I really like about Game Time is that they have the Game Time guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's why it's one of the fastest growing ticketing apps in the country for a reason. So snag the tickets without stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app on your phone, either for Apple or Android devices, create an account, and use promo code SOXMACHINE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account on Game Time and redeem code SOXMACHINE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
There's no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform that you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy because Indeed does the hard work for you. They show you the candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your description immediately after you post so you can hire faster. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports, and support the show by saying that you heard it on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
And listen, it's a very delicate balance because I understand the White Sox fans that are stressing patience here. You want to get the best deal possible, and I totally understand that. But to your point, Jim, there is a risk of waiting too long to get better pitchers. Like, no offense to Lucas Giolito. I really like Lucas Giolito, and I think he could help a contending team. But man, if I'm a contending team and Shohei Ohtani appears in the trade market, if Blake Snell appears in the trade market, like, I'm sorry, Giolito, those guys are 1 and 2, and now you're number 3. So right now on July 13th, Lucas Giolito is the best starting pitcher available in the trade market. Is that going to be the case at the end of the month? I don't know. And probably not, depending on how the Angels and Padres continue to play here, as both teams are really struggling and they're in this downward spiral. And especially for the Angels, since they don't have Mike Trout for the rest of this month, he's not going to be back until sometime in August, and they've lost 13 of their last 17 games. So this is where it's a delicate balance here. It's a balance that Rick Hahn just hasn't been able to capitalize and try to help build a contending team. So maybe going back to what is a familiar stance for him, selling at the deadline, like he did during the rebuild years, maybe he'll be able to capitalize on a potential deal. But Jim and I both agree, even though it's a bit heartbreaking, we weren't expecting this, or at least we were hoping that this time wouldn't come. The time has come. The post-All-Star break in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be focusing on selling time, which means that Jim and I have to be on standby in case the White Sox do making these trades for the emergency podcast. One thing I think that is influencing some of the decision-making, we got this comment from Matt during the YouTube stream, which, by the way, if you're listening to the podcast version of this, the audio version, we do stream this show on youtube.com/SoxMachine. And when we do stream it live, it gives people the opportunity to post comments and questions during the show. And Matt posted this comment. John Greenberg said in The Athletic that he expects White Sox payroll will be up to $50 million less next year, rebuild 3.0. And to Matt's question / comment and what John Greenberg wrote in The Athletic, and I recommend if you didn't get a chance to read his column, we'll have that link within the post on SoxMachine.com. The White Sox are bleeding fan attendance, Jim, which is hilarious because during the All-Star break, Major League Baseball is bragging through their communications and PR department about how in-game fan attendance is growing league-wide.
And getting younger. The median age is now 43. The White Sox are down 4,000 fans per game at home.
And that may grow to 5,000 per game compared to last year after the trade deadline. What is the significance of that? Now think about how much each fan spends on average per game that they attend. A beer and a hot dog. Well, a guarantee rate field, that's like $20, okay, for a beer and a hot dog. If you say that is the average fan concession, and 4,000 fans that you're losing, so what, you're losing about $800,000 per home game that you were expecting if you thought that attendance would stay the same from 2022? $800,000 fewer dollars per home game over the course of 81 home games. Yeah, someone's going to be knocking on the door and being like, how are we going to make up for this loss of revenue? And this is the business part that could be influencing some of the decision making, in which someone above Rick Hahn, which is the board of directors, saying this player payroll is way too high for how crummy our record is. We need to unload player payroll. And that could be a factor as well. Not so much as figuring out how can we reload for the 2024 season, but we need to look at the bottom line of the 2023 season. We're not liking where our numbers are. You need to unload player payroll. It would be like companies laying off employees to make up the revenue gap.
Yeah, a bad quarter basically is how they have to treat it. Yeah, or 2 bad quarters in a row. That's when you start cutting. And yeah, I mean, to go to into James Fox mode, like, what's the point of winning games in the second half, draft position, et cetera. And like, while I'm not a staunch believer in that, depending on like what the roster looks like, it is a case where like, what Tim Anderson can do if he's healthy, and that's if he stays. What Yoan Moncada can do if he's healthy. Like Luis Robert, we're seeing what he can do when he's healthy.
Right.
I think there's value in Robert playing like as many games as possible, like building up that 6-month grind, because he's never really been able to do that. Same thing with Kopech. Like, get his innings all the way up. There's some players who benefit from playing really well or as well as possible over the course of 6 months, and you want to see him do that. But elsewhere on the roster, between like the rotation, like Mike Mayers being picked up from the Royals, like Royals cast off, another one to just, be a body who can throw innings, and it doesn't really matter how. Just how well they are. Just it's about just not burning out the few relievers you like. Basically, that's what purpose he'll serve. Like lining up those arms just to absorb innings. They're kind of in that mode already, I think, of just acquiring bodies just to get through the rest of the season. And I think enjoy Roberts. If Lenine Sosa comes back, Oscar Colas, et cetera, like see what they can do. But there isn't a whole lot of hope to sell over the last 2 months after the deadline. There's just no real interesting September call-ups. Like Sosa's done it before, Colas has done it before. Like, they've already disappointed. There's no like new prospect smell that we're normally accustomed to seeing in September. So it's going to be rough, and it's going to be like, I imagine ratings are going to plummet. Attendance is already going to, continue to slink further down and down. So like, there's no real optimism for the remainder of 2023 to like hook revenue on. So it does make sense to cut as much as possible. And with the consolation prize that at least draft position will be bolstered a little bit. Maybe they get lucky in the lottery and all of a sudden are, having a little bit more of a boost when it comes to next year. But this year, that's, I think what's so tricky is that there's just nothing going in the second half aside from like Luis Roberts, maybe Shohei Ohtani gets traded to the National League and Roberts MVP candidates, it gets a little bit of a boost. Who knows? That's I think what we're looking at here.
Yeah, if ratings crash, I think that's going to play a huge factor in what Comcast wants to do after the 2024 season, because that's another thing to think about, is that the White Sox current television deal expires in October of 2024. And Comcast, according to Jerry Reinsdorf, is paying about $700,000, which is like $100 million over the course of the season.
Mm-hmm.
They ain't making $100 million in ad revenue or cable subscription fees as well.
Yeah.
For the White Sox. Like they're not making that. They're losing money. So I don't think, as we have learned, regional sports networks either cannot afford to lose money or B, don't want to lose money anymore. So that could also add a lot of stress into how the White Sox handle their business. And I know this is business talk for the White Sox, but the business is also going to impact what type of roster the White Sox have and what decision making that they have. And we talked about this before the season. Rick Hahn's not very good at managing money and spending money. And here are the consequences when you do not field a good team and you got a bloated payroll. It adds a lot of stress in other areas of the business. And those people have very loud voices and they will force baseball operations to make some cuts that they do not want to make.
Yeah, especially when it comes to the roster the White Sox have and like how it seems like the White Sox value relievers and value like first baseman DHs more than any other team. So they have a lot of what other teams don't want. It becomes a little bit like a baseball outlet store, a little bit like, just here's all our extras. We're just shipping off, trying to sell at a discount. Like you want Gavin Sheets, like he can kind of stand at first base and doesn't have terrible at bats with the bases loaded. How about that? Like that's really what they're trying to sell here. So it's not looking good.
The Chicago White Sox are the DSW shoes of Major League Baseball.
Yeah. Flickering fluorescent lights. Yeah.
Oh, man. All right. So let's talk about a particular trade rumor as John Morosi of various outlets reported that the Dodgers are currently interested in Lucas Giolito. And let's call this, as I've said this in the past, informed speculation. Prior to Joe Kelly going on the injured list, I was told by a Dodger source that the Dodgers were interested in Joe Kelly, but they were looking at a package deal. And they have a ton of interest in Liam Hendriks, but Liam Hendriks is obviously not available. There was some interest a few weeks ago in the Dodgers for Lucas Giolito. In those few weeks, things have changed again on the starting pitching front for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Then Clayton Kershaw was healthy. Now Clayton Kershaw is not healthy. And it's amazing to me and where the Dodgers are in the National League West, Jim, with all of the issues that they have at starting pitching. I mean, they're tied with the Arizona Diamondbacks right now for first place in the National League West. And it just seems like their starting pitching rotation is bound together by duct tape. And at any point, it could all break apart. So they could really use someone like Lucas Giolito to help solidify the starting rotation until Clayton Kershaw comes back. And they're obviously thinking postseason. So here, Giolito has postseason experience. He had that outstanding start in 2020 at Oakland during the COVID shortened year. I understand the thought process and the interest here from the Los Angeles Dodgers. What are your thoughts about this particular trade rumor? Do you think that there's some fire that's blowing some smoke here coming out of Los Angeles?
I think it makes some sense, especially if he's like, say, Giolito's a free agent after the year, and they might have some interest in signing him, depending on, I imagine they're lining all their ducks in a row for Ohtani and seeing what happens there.
Yes.
But like Giolito's somebody who could maybe they are interested in as well, or as like a fallback in the event that Ohtani doesn't work out. Although it's hard to imagine like the Dodgers whiffing on him if they've taken this year to, try to reset some of the payroll and, normally Dodgers don't do that. So I think it takes very special circumstances for the Dodgers to not quite punt a year by their standards, but at least lower the ambitions of their immediate roster in the hopes of getting something bigger. But when you look at their top prospect list too, I mean, like they have multiples of guys, they have pitchers they can afford to trade. They have multiples of catchers. Like I think, my qualms with trading with the Dodgers is sometimes like I'm thinking like Keibert Ruiz, who hasn't really done much, and like he was the hot commodity when the Nationals traded for him. Like they are great at generating prospects, but sometimes I wonder if they're great at generating prospects who don't quite materialize because maybe their system is so good, or their the player development tools they have or the people they have on hand just don't translate to a lesser organization with that doesn't have as much invested in personnel and technology as the White Sox might. So, I mean, that's really my reservation. But like you look at like a second catcher on their list is Dalton Rushing, who is like on Fangraphs, I was looking it up. He's a 45 feature value, which puts him on like Colas tier for where he might rank on a prospect list on the White Sox, like 3 to 6. Him and a pitcher seems like fairish value for Giolito, like not bad, especially given how little the White Sox have in the catching ranks. Like they have guys I think you can mix and match, and the Dodgers wouldn't feel especially precious about, to where they make some sense, and where the White Sox could say like, yeah, we don't have anybody in the catching ranks as good as Dalton Rushing, or we don't have anybody in the pitching ranks as good as like, I'm not sure if Pepiot's good, or like, Gavin Stone, et cetera. Like even below them, like the White Sox are so pitching thin that probably you're looking at like 5, 6, 7 Dodgers pitching prospects who might be the best functional pitching prospect the White Sox would have, outside of like Noah Schultz, who is very far away and doesn't have the workload built. So yeah, there are a lot of ways the Dodgers could help. I would just wonder if you're trading for like the middle of the Dodger system, will they survive the transplant to an organization that just doesn't have that much invested in player development overall?
So the Dodgers' number one prospect is catcher Diego Cartaya. And you mentioned Dalton Rushing. Based on this source, and this brings back Yohan Moncada, Rafael Devers memories, they believe the Dodgers value Dalton Rushing more than Cartaya. So back to your point of beware of trading with the Dodgers, because you may think this is a top prospect, surefire guy to reach the major leagues. They join your farm system, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a second, who is this guy? And Cartaya this year, he's young. He's 21 years old. He's in Double-A, but boy, he's really struggling in Double-A. He's currently batting .203, .288 on base percentage, and slugging just .375. He's struck out at least 27% in every level so far. So he's a big strikeout guy, but he's also a pretty significant walk guy, walking at a better than 13% clip. Before this season, though, he's walking around an 8% clip right now in Double-A, so that's almost a complete half drop from last year. Again, though, he's young. He's 21. That's young for the level, but he's the number one prospect. Speaking with Jim Callis, he may not be the Dodgers' number one prospect the next time they update the system. He's currently the 21st ranked prospect in the top 100. He's probably not going to be in the top 25 the next time MLB.com updates their top 100 list. That's how poor of a season Cartaya is still having. He'll still be in the top 100, but he may be someone available, and it's not pretty numbers in Double-A. And do I have confidence that the White Sox can fix him? I don't know. Probably not. I may not have a lot of confidence in the White Sox player development, but that's to your point. Like, if the White Sox can get Diego Cartaya, people will be like, yes, Rick Hahn, you did it. Good job. You got the number one prospect from the Dodgers for 3 months to Lucas Giolito. And then Cartaya comes to Birmingham, and he's got a .565 OPS, and everyone's going to be like, what the heck happened here? So I'm glad you bring that point up, because, yes, that does happen often when teams are making deals with Los Angeles Dodgers. Suddenly, when they join other systems, they become lemons. But if they stay with the Dodgers, they become useful starters.
Yeah,
so
at least Cartaya
they
can
know
throw.
what they're doing.
Yeah, that's one thing I like about Cartaya, is at least he can throw.
Yes.
To where, like, if his offensive value, kind of erodes, or at least, plateaus pretty low, at least he provides defense, can be at least one of two catchers on your 26-man roster, assuming like the bottom doesn't completely fall out.
I think for any trade with Giolito, you obviously want the best prospects possible. But if you have to choose, I almost feel like it's got to be a deal that involves the best Double-A, or Triple-A pitcher that's really close to the majors, Jim. Like, that's how I feel, and I could be wrong about this particular angle. And we talked about this in 2024. You got 2 pitchers on guaranteed contracts for the White Sox. If you're going to deal Giolito, I would want the White Sox to bring somebody back that can maybe be part of the discussion, realistically part of the discussion, to start some games in 2024. Because if you're going to be cutting payroll, I just don't think you have enough available payroll to build another starting rotation, even if your team's going to be terrible, to get through the 2024 season. Again, if I had the choice between multiple offerings from multiple teams about Lucas Giolito, I would like the White Sox to go in a direction where it brings back the best possible AAA, AA pitcher that can maybe be part of the equation in 2024. But again, you got to take the best deal possible when it comes to prospects. Whoever is the most talent, whatever team's giving you the most talent, you should be taking that deal. But if everything was even, I would like the White Sox to focus on trying to replace Giolito with another pitcher, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you. And yeah, I think that's really the biggest obstacle for the White Sox competing in 2024 is just if they get rid of all their pitchers, Lance Lynn gets traded, his option, even if overpriced, isn't available as somebody who might have some upside to fill in rosters, a rotation spot with innings, which you can't count on. Let's say if Davis Martin were somehow healthy and fully functional in April, he wouldn't be able to provide starts and innings the way that Lynn would. But if Lynn's traded, then he's not a factor, even if he's overpriced for 1 year. And as we've seen with the White Sox, and not just the White Sox, but 1 year deals for pitchers, that's a crapshoot. Mike Clevenger's been okay. And really the season that he had in the first half is about as good as you can hope for from those 1 year contract guys, because they would sign 1 year contracts for a reason. So if you're looking to piecemeal together a rotation, that's probably going to be a pretty gruesome ending. So yeah, I would like to see pitching depth built up, especially since Martin's out. Who knows what's happening to Sean Burke? Not a whole lot of life there. Christian Mena has been struggling, over the last month or so.
And they're messing with the baseball again in AA, so it's hard to figure out what's actually going on.
Yep. So I agree with you. Pitching would be nice, and I think the Dodgers are a system that has a lot of interesting pitchers. And also it seems like they're a little bit of a case where, if you remember the White Sox with Daniel Hudson, when they traded him for Edwin Jackson, Hudson was a good pitcher. He just did not get a chance to audition with the White Sox. He did not get a chance to fail and go back to AAA, or at least just have 2 bad months in the majors, but eventually figure it out. They did not have that kind of time. They traded him for Edwin Jackson. Hudson had 1 good year with the Diamondbacks as a starter and then got hurt. But I think the Dodgers are in a similar position. Gavin Stone's been up and down a little bit. Bobby Miller's been up. I think he's going to be sticking, but other guys don't really have that ability to struggle. So I'm hoping that the White Sox, in a trade with a team like the Dodgers, could take advantage of that. They have a lot of arms, but they also can't afford to have 7 bad starts from a guy, especially if they have other pitchers who can come up and take that guy's place. So maybe, their surplus of interesting arms that are unproven and might not be ready for a pennant race could fall into the White Sox lap a little bit, and just here's an opportunity to get starts, throw 4 innings. If you throw 3 1/3 and get knocked out, next start's 5 days away. No pressure, no stakes. Just the experience is what counts.
So we got this question from the YouTube live chat from Brian O'Connor. And Brian asked, if you had to guess, will Tim Anderson get packaged at the deadline, or will the White Sox just hold on to him at this point? And Brian, this is a great segue to our next conversation, the post All-Star break stories we are following. This is my number 1 story that I'm following for the White Sox post Anderson. And I don't mean to make you cry, and I don't make anyone that's watching the live stream or listening to the podcast feed cringe. But if you missed my segment on 670 The Score, for the batters that are currently qualified for the batting title, Tim Anderson has a negative 1.1 WAR according to Fangraphs. He is the 3rd worst position player in Major League Baseball. Only Enrique Hernandez of the Boston Red Sox and Jurickson Profar of the Colorado Rockies are worse than Tim Anderson. Out of the qualified hitters for the batting title, Tim Anderson has a 43 weighted runs created plus, which means he's 57% below league average. He is the worst hitter in Major League Baseball. That qualifies for the batting title by 18%. To answer your question, Brian, I can't imagine any team wanting Tim Anderson right now. And, it's funny, Chuck Garfien mentioned that he sees vultures in the last post-game show that NBC Sports Chicago had. I can see opposing GMs being vultures after this season ends, circling what are the White Sox going to do with Tim Anderson. Because Lawrence Holmes posed this question to me Would the White Sox buy out Tim Anderson, not pick up the club option? If he continues, and this is why he's the number one story for me post All-Star break, if Tim Anderson does not improve from these numbers, Jim, I think that's a serious conversation after the season. And maybe a team is circling, and they're not going to give Tim Anderson a lot of money by any stretch of the imagination, but a bounce back deal, sure. But trading him before the deadline, if it were to happen, honestly, I would be floored. I would be really shocked. I don't think any Major League Baseball team would be giving something of value to acquire Tim Anderson with how he's performed. Did that make sense, Jim?
Yeah. I mean, he seems like, let's say the Dodgers were a popular destination for Anderson as soon as basically Gavin Lux got hurt. There's talk about like, well, if the White Sox are out of it, they would want Tim Anderson. Tim Anderson would love to be in Los Angeles and have that kind of attention. And I could see maybe the Dodgers trading for him, but not with like immediate ambitions. More like, here's a distressed asset. If we have to buy him out after the season, no big deal. Let's see if we can, get him for, 20% of what he would have commanded going into the year, or, packaged with another like Joe Kelly or something like that. Just, a way to just get somebody else they want more for cheaper with the money being saved. And I think if Anderson were traded, that I think would speak to the amount of money they're looking to cut, just because if the White Sox are truly rebuilding, or not even rebuilding so much because that implies like a tear down, but just like looking to just have payroll melt off the books. And by the time the payroll is cleared, they hopefully have another, maybe Colson Montgomery is ready, maybe Brian Ramos is ready, or whatever prospects they acquire in trades are ready to provide the remainder of the core a different supporting group. It could be a case where like, yeah, it makes sense to have Anderson just for one more year, or at least, another offseason, another trading period to see like if they can get a better deal. Like if no team wants to add Anderson now, maybe a team will want to add Anderson over the winter when they don't have to pay, $5 million for a bad shortstop, or shortstop who's playing like a bad shortstop and can't be counted on to turn it around with a different team and a change of scenery. So like they're looking at the same thing with Liam Hendriks with his option, which is like, 10 years of payments if they don't pick it up. And, that's another case to where like they could just say like, let's pick it up because we'll rather just pay this money now rather than have 1.5 million gum up the books down the road when we're actually going to have to be counting every dollar. Like I'm hoping next year is, they're going to be cutting payroll, but maybe not to the extent that they have to cut every single dollar in order to try to recoup some value. Like if Anderson has a good couple months next year, he'll probably get more, even with him being an impending free agent, than he would in his current shape. Same thing with the offseason too. Like if he shows signs of life at the end of September, I can imagine teams would want to be maybe interested in what they could acquire for one full year of him, with the ability to give him a qualifying offer afterwards. Like there are more attractive trading windows, I think, for the White Sox than selling them now, unless they really want to save every $1 million possible, or they just think Anderson's toast, which I don't think is enough reason to believe right now based on the knee injury he suffered and the off-field stuff he's going through. And I think also some, mechanical issues that are just resulting in line drives to right field and pulled everything on the ground to the left side. I think he can recover some of that. And so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to trade him now from a baseball reason, I don't think.
Quickly for me, the rest of the post All-Star break stories I'm following. Luis Robert chasing 40-40 season, 40 doubles, 40 home runs. He's currently at 26 homers, 23 doubles. We haven't seen a 40-40 season since Frank Thomas back in the 2000 season. Only two White Sox hitters have ever done it, Albert Bell in 1998 and Thomas in 2000. Is Oscar Colas someone? That's something I'm going to be paying attention to. And my last one, is Yohan Moncada alive? I need proof of life at some point in August and September that Yohan Moncada is alive, because that man is going to get a healthy pay raise next season, in which Moncada has a guaranteed contract of $24.5 million. And before any of you ask, even if you're listening in the car, no, I don't see the White Sox trading Yohan Moncada at that rate. Jim, how about you? What's a post All-Star break story that you're going to be following?
think, as you mentioned, Oscar Colas, I'd expand that to second base and right field to see, like, if by the end of the season, do they have like Lenyn Sosa or Jose Rodriguez or somebody looking possible for the right side, assuming Tim Anderson's traded and they need somebody at the left side too, like an Oscar Colas in right field. Like, is he somebody? Michael Kopech, like, do we finally learn whether he can survive 5 to 6 months as a starter, or is it going to be like touch and go for the remainder of the season, the last 2.5 months? I guess it's like Liam Hendriks, see what comes of him, see if he's able to get back on the field at all. And then after that, it gets pretty thin. Like, it just, even like Andrew Vaughn, not terribly exciting. I don't think, I think he can show better, but also I think he's naturally limited in terms of like how much value he can provide. So like if he gets 25, 30 homers, that's cool. If he gets to 100 RBIs, like that's neat, but also like just with his limitations as a base runner and defender, just not going to be somebody who's terribly special. Eloy Jimenez, can he put together like a good half, even if it's like another guy to possibly trade? That's, I would look at him as somebody who's not part of the core necessarily, but is probably not worth trading right now because of just, he has to show more, I think, in order to capitalize on what he could potentially be worth.
That's a good point, Jim. I wouldn't trade Eloy right now. However, if he ends this post All-Star break strong and maybe gets to like 25 home runs hit this season, I think you can muster up more interest in the offseason to trade Eloy Jimenez. Maybe something like a winter meetings type of deal that the White Sox have done in the past. So, yeah, I agree to your point. I don't think Eloy's value is all that great right now, but it could increase, especially if he could stay healthy and he hits post All-Star break. So that's a really good point, Jim. All right, so let's talk about the games. The Chicago White Sox this weekend start not a very fun road trip. We talked about this at the beginning of the season. We circled this post All-Star break road trip that it's going to be very tough for the White Sox. And it starts in Atlanta. The Atlanta Braves are the best team in Major League Baseball right now. They're 30-15 in home games. They have the number one offense in baseball in team OPS. As a team, they have an 831 OPS. And they lead the league in home runs. They have hit 169 home runs this season. They are averaging 1.89 home runs per game. At home, they hit better. At home, they're hitting 846 OPS as a team. And as a team, they are slugging 502 as a team at home. And they average 5.7 runs per game at home. So this is a very tough test offensively for the White Sox pitchers. And oh, by the way, the Atlanta Braves team ERA is 3.63. That is also the best in Major League Baseball. It's not often that we see the best offense, the best pitching staff together at some point during the season. But these are the brave souls for the White Sox. Are going to try to take on the Atlanta Braves Friday at 6:20 p.m. Central Time. Hey, look at that. It's Michael Kopech. Maybe that shoulder is not as hurt as we thought, so that is good news. Lance Lynn will take the ball on Saturday at 6:15 p.m. Central Time. Charlie Morton's going to start the game on Friday opposing Kopech. Spencer Strider is going to start the Saturday game, Quadzilla. And he is having a fantastic season. I think he's a contender for the National League Cy Young. And then on Sunday, it's Colby Allard for the Atlanta Braves, the lefty. And at 12:35 p.m. Central Time, it will be Dylan Cease for the White Sox making that start on Sunday. Again, like I said, these are the brave souls for the White Sox pitching staff to try to take on the Atlanta Braves. And Jim, the only thing I request the White Sox this weekend is that in April, the White Sox got swept in Toronto, losing all 3 games by a combined score 20-2. I'm hoping they fare better this weekend.
Yeah, I feel good about my Braves preseason World Series pick. Like that's
great
feeling pretty good right
awesome
now. Looking at their stats, looking at their just how their team is built. Even like Austin Riley's had like a little bit of a down season. Like Michael Harris hasn't quite been like made the jump yet on his contract extensions, but like they're both like, Riley's a third baseman, Harris is a center fielder. Like they both provide like all around value to where like the roster works really well. And even if they're like, decent bats rather than great bats, like it all fits together. And right now they have 11 guys who have more than 100 plate appearances and have an OPS above 700. More bats than spots. The White Sox have 5. And one of them's Andrew Benintendi with 1 homer at 716 OPS, like, barely getting over. And that's kind of what we're looking at, right? Like studies in contrast, the White Sox extending guys, but, either extending the wrong guys or just not having the healthy guys or not having enough versatility defensively to like feel like they're providing value, like especially like Eloy Jimenez, like when he's not hitting, he's not doing anything. Whereas like the Braves, like one extension after another, and they're all working. Some are working fantastically. Some are working, decently, but they're all functioning to like build the Braves like into a better team. And I'm really looking forward to watching the Braves. Like I'm looking forward to watching Ronald Acuna Jr., like looking to see like what kind of pace he's like on an Eric Davis 1980s pace of like homers and stolen bases. And I vaguely remember Eric Davis, but I remember him as like a baseball card more than a player because like the highlights weren't as available. I just remember like, how? Like I remember watching Ricky Henderson and knowing what the stolen bases look like. And I remember seeing like the homers, what they look like, but seeing them both come from one player and being like, how is it possible to like go 30-60? And like Acuna can do that. So I'm looking forward to seeing like one, if he gets on base, how much he runs on the White Sox pitching staff and how many stolen bases he'll amass. But there's value in watching like good baseball teams against the White Sox, even if it is a matter of just, the score is unpleasant, but at least you realize like, oh yeah, this is how a team should function. And this is how a team capitalizes on success rather than like has one good year and then does nothing and watches it fritter away.
Shohei Ohtani deserves a lot of attention for what he is doing this season. It is one of the best baseball seasons ever. I haven't went to StatHead to look this up, but is there anyone that comes off the top of your mind that had 40 or more doubles, 40 or more home runs, and 60 plus stolen bases in a season? Because right now, that is what Ronald Acuna Jr. is on pace to do in 2023.
Yeah, I can't, like Eric Davis is the one guy, and let me look up his best season.
Did Jose Canseco get anywhere close to that?
He had 40-40. Like he topped it at 42 homers and 40 stolen bases, I think. And he probably got caught stealing like 30 times.
I know Jose was one to run back in the day.
Yeah, Eric Davis, like, he didn't have the games. That was the thing about Davis is like, I don't know if it's Riverfront Stadium, but like he never played more than 135 games in a season. But like his 86 was 27 homers, 15 doubles, 80 stolen bases. 87 was 37 homers, 50 stolen bases, 23 doubles, but only in 129 games. Wow. So, and let me look up what that was in wins above replacement. Yeah, so 8 wins above replacement in 130 games.
Damn. Yeah, again, Ohtani having a fantastic season. We may be seeing 2 historical seasons in the MVPs this year, in the American and National League. And again, I'm not trying to diminish what Ohtani's doing. It is one of the best seasons ever in baseball history. But man, if Ronald Acuna gets to 40 plus doubles and 40 plus home runs, and he ends up with like 70 stolen bases, like that's up there too offensively at the very least. Obviously he doesn't pitch, but as offensively one of the best seasons in our lifetime. I mean, yeah. I have to do some research on how many guys have done that in the past. Maybe nobody ever has, and Acuna is on pace to make some history himself.
Yeah, Barry Bonds is the other one I thought of, but because he drew so many walks at all points in his career, like he doesn't quite have the hits, but like in 1990, he went 33 homers, 32 doubles, 52 stolen bases. 93 was 46 homers, 38 doubles, 29 stolen bases. So basically like Bonds at his fastest did not quite have the power he showed later. Acuna is like basically has everything going at one point.
Sure does. Just like Luis Robert, we've been waiting for Acuna to stay healthy. Injuries have nagged him, and this is it. This is his full form, his full potential. And man, what a amazing baseball player he is and just how he makes the Atlanta Braves so much more dangerous. And get a chance to watch him this weekend against the White Sox pitching staff. So Michael Kopech, Lance Lynn, and Dylan Cease, good luck, guys. In Atlanta, you got a tough test. The last date I want to touch on, the 2024 Major League Baseball schedule was released today. It gets released earlier and earlier. If this is going to be a new thing during the All-Star break, I'm all for it, as we like to plan big things as far as fan meetups, especially when the White Sox go on the road. And looking at the 2024 MLB schedule, we can tell you now that there's going to be 2 meetups next season. The first meetup is going to be in Milwaukee. So if you remember, in 2021, we had a big tailgate. We thought 200 people were going to be coming. It ended up being 400 people that ended up coming for the Brewers White Sox. And that tailgate is going to be Saturday, June 1st, 2024. That series, the White Sox are in Milwaukee for the weekend. Friday, May 31st, Saturday, June 1st, and Sunday, June 2nd. So I know some of us will be in Milwaukee all weekend long because it's a short drive, and hotel rooms are pretty affordable. So something to consider. If you are already making plans and you hear this, like, yes, I missed it last time, but I will not miss it in 2024. Go ahead and book a hotel room, stay overnight Saturday night, make it a lot easier for yourself. I can't imagine driving to Milwaukee, hang out with us at the tailgate, go to the game, and driving back to Chicago. I don't think that's feasible. I wouldn't recommend it. But again, if you're looking ahead, Saturday, June 1st, 2024, we're going to be hosting a tailgate along with our friends from the 108 and also inviting new friends as well. The Bums, who do a great job in Lot B, hosting tailgates this year at White Sox games. We've asked them to help out because, it's a lot of people that are going to be coming to Milwaukee. We're going to be prepared, more prepared than we were last time. Still, it was a great time though, last time we did it. So there you go. Yeah, that's the first one.
We need a lot of loaves and fishes, basically.
Yeah, ice also. Everyone bring ice. And the second one, well, we have a little bit of a video for the podcast listeners. You'll miss out. You have to go to youtube.com/SoxMachine. But for those watching a live stream, here's the announcement for the big meetup in 2024. Yes, Kansas City.
Finally.
We are coming. We finally got a Kansas City weekend, Jim.
Yes. Yeah, we've been wanting to do it for a while, between just the ample parking lots, the reasonably priced tickets, thanks to the Royals issues creating demand. You had the Negro Leagues Museum there, just a lot of baseball and baseball adjacent fun to be had. Again, hotel price, a lot of different areas to stay in to get the kind of accommodation prices you want. Should work out pretty well.
Yes. So there's a lot of planning we're going to be doing, events that will be happening over the weekend. Where Milwaukee is a tailgate, that's a Saturday thing. We'll see you on Saturday. If we run into you over the weekend, great. But Saturday is a tailgate. Kansas City, there'll be more involved. We'll have a big tailgate. We're going to try to do a tour also at the Negro League Museum in Kansas City. Jim knows the barbecue scene very well. Maybe we'll have some meetups, doing a little barbecue hopping or a little bar crawl as well in Kansas City for some #108ing. That will be more involved. That is the big trip. So it's more than a calendar year away. It's the series after the All-Star break, so a year away from now, and the same type of conversation we're having. I'm looking forward to it. It's been on our short list for quite some time, and we've got some exciting things planned for that weekend at Kansas City. So there you go. That's the 2 meetups in 2024, Milwaukee in early June and Kansas City in mid-July in 2024. So if you're already clearing your calendar to make some weekend trips, we hope that you pick these weekends as well to come hang out with us next year. And if you want to learn more about the 2024 MLB schedule release, you can go to SoxMachine.com, as Jim has done a write-up to do a quick breakdown of how that schedule looks for the Chicago White Sox. Even though we don't know what kind of team the White Sox are going to have in 2024, honestly, we don't know what kind of team the White Sox are going to have in a couple of weeks. So that's what makes it exciting. So hang on with us. I expect some emergency podcasts between now and the end of the month as we capture all of the news coming in for the Chicago White Sox of what they do prior to the trade deadline. But that will do it for this episode of Sox Machine Live. For those that are, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Oh, actually, a couple notes. Like Ted mentioned, to follow up on the Acuna, the rarity of the season he's having. He did mention Alfonso Soriano in 2006. He's the 40-40-40 guy. 46 homers, 41 doubles, 41 stolen bases.
Wow.
A couple other ones. I was did the stat head search. Larry Walker, 49 homers, 46 doubles, 33 stolen bases for the 97 Rockies. Coors Field, but he was a very special talent at the time. Jeff Bagwell. I forgot he was that fast, but he had 43 homers, 40 doubles, and 31 stolen bases in 1997.
Wow. I had no idea. It's the crouch. It throws you off.
Yep. Jose Canseco, the 40-40 season, 42 homers, 40 steals, but only 34 doubles. Same thing with A-Rod in his 40-40 season. 42 homers, 46 steals, 35 doubles. So, yeah, Alfonso Soriano is the 40-40-40 guy.
Wow. Well, I think Ronald Acuna's got a shot to join Alfonso Soriano. So great job, Ted. Great job, Jim, looking that up. And yeah, that will do it for this episode of Sox Machine Live. For those that are watching the live stream on youtube.com/Sox Machine, I encourage you to go watch our friends from the 108. Their show starts at 8 p.m. Central Time at youtube.com/From the 108 as they continue the conversation about the Chicago White Sox going into this weekend. But that will do it for this episode of Sox Machine Live. If you just discovered SoxMachine.com and the podcast and the live show, you can follow us on Twitter. We're at Sox Machine. You can follow me on Twitter at SoxMachine_Josh. We're also on Threads as well. Those are our Instagram handles, so you can follow us on Threads as well as that new social media outlet. Get started. If you just watched the video, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine and watch all of our videos. We always take the audio versions of Sox Machine Live and upload it into our podcast feed, which you can subscribe to the Sox Machine podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. If you enjoy our work and want more, you can get more by becoming a Sox Machine Patreon supporter at patreon.com/Sox Machine, where our Patreon supporters get exclusive content. They get ad-free versions of both the podcast and website, and new Sox Machine swag. Monthly plans start at $2, or you can save with an annual subscription. Again, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. Sox Machine Live is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for watching and listening.